when I woke up this morning, I was feeling pretty dangerous.
Jameson Williams has been so impressive these last couple of weeks.
What is going on, everyone out there in the podcast world? This is another edition of the Cover One NFL Draft Weekly. As always, I'm your host at Burn River Sports. Also with me, Russell Brown at Russ NFL Draft. As usual, Russ, this is our eighth NFL Draft Weekly episode here on the Cover One Network, and it's getting down to a couple weeks away from the NFL Draft. You're gonna, you have your second mock draft up on the cover1.net site. So if everyone out there, go check that out. We're gonna go through it tonight here on the show and answer questions and kind of talk about the, what Russ was thinking as he went through the draft. Kind of maybe even look back to his first one. I know he's doing it from some different perspectives, but we'll get into all of that tonight. But Russell, as always, Thursday, getting close to the weekend, man. What's going on over there?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I think my internet cut out there for a second, but I'm doing pretty well. I'm excited to be in here talking a little NFL draft, of course, talking about my mock draft that dropped. And I know some people reached out and said, I really like it. Other people reached out and said, there's no way this team is going to do that. And I'm like, that's fine. You don't have inside sources and neither do I. And it's just a mock draft. It's not real life, but no, doing well. We're getting closer and closer to it. It's pretty crazy. It's exactly 3 weeks away.
Yeah, 3 weeks. I'm excited, even though my Browns don't have a first round pick anymore. I love the NFL draft. Obviously, that's why we're doing this show. But before we dive, right into the mock and kind of get your thoughts and let you explain kind of your thought process a little bit from some of those picks. Maybe let's just there was some movement in the NFL this week. Obviously, the big transaction, of course, was the trade between the Saints and the Eagles. That's going to at least affect the NFL draft. So let's see if I can recap. That was a pretty crazy trade. The Eagles sent the number 16 overall pick and 19 overall pick in this draft, and then a 6th round pick to the Saints for number 18 overall, 3rd round pick, 7th round pick. But basically, it kind of took one of those Eagles picks out of the mix this year. They kind of got to spread that draft capital out a little bit, and the Saints are now poised with a couple mid-round picks here in the first round of the 2022 draft. So I know we'll probably get into that a little bit when we're talking through your mock, but just on the surface, what were your thoughts of that trade between the Saints and Eagles?
Yeah, I was at Woodward Sports when the trade happened, and I was sitting there and I was like, well, good thing I'm about to be doing a show about the draft because we're going to be talking about this now. And it's like every time I'm there, there's some news that's breaking, it feels like. But, yeah, I mean, it broke. And I was like, this is kind of odd just simply because it's a trade that's happening so far in advance. And I feel like if you are going to be moving up the board to get a quarterback, you would be already kind of getting that deal in place. And I don't think you'd be doing it this far ahead. I don't think you would be kind of tipping your hand to other teams in your division, like the Atlanta Falcons, who could be looking at a quarterback, or the Carolina Panthers at 6, who could be looking at a quarterback. I don't see them packaging these 2 picks and going up to like 5 or 7 or anything like that. I really don't. Maybe they do, but I just don't see it happening. So with the Saints, I mean, I think they're putting themselves in a position for basically 2 out of 3 positions. That's offensive tackle, quarterback, and wide receiver. And I think, they like Desmond Ridder quite a bit. He was somebody, I think, in my original mock draft from after the Super Bowl, I had them taking him at 18. I don't think I didn't give them Desmond Ridder in this mock draft that we're going to talk about tonight. But I mean, I still think that they really like him. I think if they were in a pinch to play him in year 1, they could probably still win some football games. And if they're somehow able to land Trevor Penning and Desmond Ridder in the first round, I think that's a win-win for them, or maybe even potentially Charles Cross. I think it's a win-win for them. So wide receiver, it's a deep group. So I don't know if they'll necessarily put a focus on that in round 1, maybe. But having a quarterback and an offensive tackle with a 5th-year option, I think would do some wonders for a team that's kind of pressed against the cap right now.
Yeah, I agree. And I read a number of different pieces just on the thought process of the trade, and the Saints now have the firepower to move up if they want to. I kind of agree that I don't know that after signing Jameis Winston, not that he's potentially a guy that's going to be there long term, but I don't know that they really do that right now this year. And then again, I think from the Eagles' perspective, it makes a lot of sense to kind of spread out that draft capital a little bit. If they actually did stay and take 3 first-rounders this year and they all hit, you're in an interesting situation when those fifth-year options come up from a cap perspective, even for them, down the road, which, I think they would like to have some flexibility in next year's draft. Obviously, they have 2 picks still in the first round in 2022, so they can still get some impact players to help their team this year. So interesting trade. I actually thought it wasn't terrible for either side. I kind of got I think the Saints maybe gave up a little bit, but we'll see what they do with those 2 picks, and that'll kind of determine if the trade was a success or not for them. Some other movement, nothing crazy since we've, last week when we were on air here on the Cover One Network, obviously from a Bills perspective, they re-upped Stephon Diggs, which I know Bills Mafia is really, really excited about. I don't really think that impacts the draft necessarily at all, but that was, a pretty big move to get him signed through, I believe it was 2027. The Rams, yes. The Rams added Bobby Wagner, which, I thought was an interesting move for them on the defensive side of the football. But, really, other than that trade, not a ton, in my opinion, that was happening in the NFL this week. But, what were your thoughts? Just general movement. Did you see anything that interested you this week? Or was it kind of, what I was kind of talking about there, maybe a little bit of a slow week?
Yep. I mean, pretty much just off what you're kind of talking about. I mean, it's really the move with the Saints and the Eagles was the big one. And there just hasn't really been anything crazy yet. Maybe next week we'll see some stuff, or maybe over the weekend we'll see some stuff that maybe moves and impacts things. But obviously, in 3 weeks, that's when it will probably get really interesting, when we do see some teams moving around on the draft board. Maybe it's Pittsburgh. Maybe it's a team like, the Washington Commanders, who might go all in on maybe either a quarterback or a defensive player or something. They want to confirm that they get that guy, so they move up the board. There's a lot of different things that can happen, obviously, as we know in the history of the draft. So no, I don't really have anything too crazy from the news standpoint. Just, obviously trying to keep track of all these visits of all these players and who they're meeting with and how important that stuff can be. And obviously we have some new regimes with, you look at the Giants, it's kind of hard to gauge what direction they might go with the 5th and 7th pick. I don't think they want both picks, to be completely honest. So I think they're going to try to move one of those picks, probably 7. And I think it's more so because of the teams behind them at 7 that, might be in a position to get a quarterback, but also it could be just 5 in case the team wants to jump in front of Carolina, because all signs are pointing to Carolina taking a quarterback. So I think the Giants are the team to really keep track on the most for, the top 10. And then other than that, I mean, I can't really think of anything outside of the ordinary that maybe we haven't already talked about, or that hasn't already been talked about on other shows or on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, agreed. So, again, not a ton of movement, as you mentioned there. We got a couple comments out there coming into the chat about, some of the Bills movement. Obviously, as we run through Russell's mock draft 2.0, feel free, as always. We love to interact with the chat. That's kind of why we're here. So throw any questions out there you want. We'll certainly kind of stop the mock and bring them up if we can, and just kind of answer them. So, I think, Jason's comment here, I think a lot of teams kind of try to take this approach a little bit. If they're kind of towards the top end of the cap, they're hoping that they can get, some picks that hit here in the draft and can get them on some smaller contracts and be impact players. I think a lot of teams want to hope they can do that. I think any team, will probably tell you that hitting on 6 draft picks is extremely difficult to do from a standpoint of actually getting people to produce. I mean, I think, if you look at most drafts, if you're hitting on 3 guys, honestly, that are making, playing significant downs for you, I think that's a pretty successful draft, in my opinion, in most cases in the NFL. So why don't we go ahead and get right into your mock draft 2.0. I know you did one, 6 weeks ago or so, and I believe that one was more from what you thought the teams were going to do. And I believe this one, like you mentioned, I think earlier in the show here, was more from your perspective on what you believe the team should do. So not necessarily what you feel they are going to do. So maybe, just talk about how you set up your mock draft a little bit, and then we'll jump into some of the top 10.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a mock draft, most mock drafts should be put in the perspective of what you think the team should do. But there's instances where you have to put, your GM cap on and think like the team. And that's when you go with, you start connecting the dots of, well, this player went here and he visited with this guy and this, and that. And that's what I normally do with my very last mock draft, which will come out, probably the Wednesday or Thursday of the draft, of draft week. And it will be the one that is submitted nationally. And hopefully it finishes top 5 or top 15 like it did last year. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, this one just simple, thinking outside of the box a little bit, thinking like these teams and what I would do if I was sitting there talking to these coaches and talking to these GMs and people. And I had some fun with it. And I was like, we've been talking about doing one of these episodes for a little bit of time. And I was like, well, let me get closer to the guide being done. Let me get that done. And, that's pretty much done. It's just pretty much finalizing, making sure the layout's good and the players are where they need to be as far as in the position of the board. But I was like, all right, let me do this week. And I think it was like Monday or Tuesday night. And I just ran through a simulator and I was like, boom, boom, boom. And I got through it. And then the next day I wrote out all the picks and it was done a lot quicker than I thought. So either I'm getting better at this or I just, I don't know. Maybe it's just I was in the groove or whatever. But no, I'm looking forward to talking about this because I think it seems I think it's a pretty realistic mock draft, but it's also one of those things where there's some questionable picks, I guess you could say. And how do we get copy of the guide? It will drop this coming Monday on cover1.net. It'll be free to download. If you want to give me money, go ahead and give it to a charity. Give it to people that desperately need the money and need help with things from clothing to food to medical bills, whatever it might be. Give it to people in need and just do it something like that. But yeah, the guide will be free and it'll be pretty in depth on 125 players. I'll have about 30 other guys at the end that I'll talk briefly about that I essentially only was able to watch 1 or 2 of their games because I'm not one of those guys that goes quantity over quality. I don't want to just give you 200 names and be like, oh, this is that. I want to give you as the most accurate detail and background information on the players that I get a chance to watch. So, between working this job and working a full-time job and having a kid that's in travel baseball and football and a wife that needs me around the house from time to time and things like that, like life happens and I can't fill, the duty of 250 players. Now, maybe one day that will happen if something changes down the line, but for now it's, these 125 players and they're ranked and, there's going to be some surprises. There's going to be some pissed off people and I don't care because that's what I think what I saw with the tape. But yeah, it'll be free on Monday. And if you kind of want something that's even bigger and better, if you want more detail and more players, I would check out Dane Brugler's over on The Athletic. He dropped The Beast today, which is by far, to me, the best guide out there. So mine is like, I would say a very the mini me version from Austin Powers. So you guys will enjoy that on Monday. Yeah. The laser.
Well, yeah, that's gonna be awesome. I'm looking forward to checking that out. Obviously everyone, I think what's nice about Russell is he does give some different opinions and, this comment was just in the chat, from Jason, this is going to be his 781st draft that he's looked at. And I think all of us that love the NFL and love drafting, and even, from a fantasy perspective, I think people that love fantasy football kind of really get into the draft more so maybe than others, because it's just something about the draft, trying to do your own mock drafts and everything. But at times, you can kind of read some of the national folks, whether it's on CBS or The Athletic or ESPN or whatever. And then, it's kind of similar, right? So I love when we get into some other folks, like yourself, that kind of maybe go away from the norm in certain picks. I think different perspectives is important and, interesting, right? So looking forward to reading all of your thoughts on Monday. Obviously, everybody check that out. when it drops on Monday. But, why don't we go ahead and just dive into your mock draft 2.0. Again, it's up there on cover1.net. If you guys want to pull it up, feel free to pull it up and follow along. But why don't we just hit, the top couple picks here, and then we'll go along. Obviously, again, in chat, feel free to ask any questions, and we'll answer them. So who'd you have number 1 to the Jaguars in your mock draft 2.0?
I struggle with the Jaguars because I do think Aiden Hutchinson makes a lot of sense for them, even though they recently added Arden Key. I mean, I think that Kayvon Chasen has kind of been a disappointment. Only 2 career sacks so far. It's still early in his career. He could turn it around, no doubt. But if you can upgrade at that position, I think it does wonders for you. And I think Hutchinson does it. I think he's the best player in the draft. But I am torn a little bit. I could see them going with an offensive lineman or something like that. Some information that myself and Scott Bischoff has gathered for Woodward Sports is that, Cam Robinson still has not signed his franchise tag. And I find that very interesting. And maybe there's just a delay for the draft, but if there's that delay, maybe it's because they're trying to move him. And the team I circle to is the team that's been active this week in the New Orleans Saints. So I just wonder, not one of the first round picks, but maybe that second rounder, or maybe a third rounder or something like that to get Cam Robinson over in New Orleans. Maybe that's a possibility. And obviously with Jacksonville, they can hit the reset button at offensive tackle with Evan Neal or Ike McQuan, something like that. So I'm kind of torn between those 3 guys, but I think at the end of the day, it'll probably be Aiden Hutchinson. And then for my Detroit Lions at 2, what do you think? You want me to go like the top 5? You want me to go like just 3 and 3?
Yeah, let's just run through your top 5, and then as we get questions in the chat, certainly we can stop. Yeah, if you're rolling in a thought process, go for me.
Okay, my Detroit Lions, Kayvon Thibodeau, edge out of Oregon. I'm happy with, honestly, Malik Willis, Kayvon, Jermaine Johnson. Give me one of those 3 players. I'm happy. I don't want Trayvon Walker. I know that might surprise some people. I love the athlete. I love the versatility. I love the length. I love how explosive and strong he is and powerful. But his pass rush plan is non-existent. And he's played like maybe 900 career snaps in 3 years. And like, that's concerning to me. And it's one of those things where like Aiden Hutchinson played about 800 or so. He's an odd player. And Hutchinson, I mean, like 800 this past year. So he's an odd player. But with Kayvon, again, I think he's one of the most overthought players we've seen over the last decade. When you think of just overall talent, he is one of the best players in this draft. And every time he stepped on a football field, I mean, he's been the best player. So pardon him for having that chip on his shoulder that's already kind of emerged as he maybe he doesn't know how to carry that chip necessarily yet, but he will. And if he comes to Detroit, I think that's a perfect landing spot. He gets to be reunited with a former teammate in Penei Sewell. So I think it's a good spot for them and a good spot for Kayvon if they go that route. Houston at 3. I know with Lovie Smith to think that they would go any other direction other than defense, but Evan Neal's sitting there staring at you. You need to give yourself some flexibility on your offensive line from Laramie Tunzel to Evan Neal. And he's just so explosive as an athlete. He's so versatile. And if you are going to invest in Davis Mills, you might as well protect him the best that you can. I will get to that question in a moment. You try to just protect him the best that you can. And even if he's not your guy after this year, Davis Mills, set the table up for success for the next guy, whoever that might be. Maybe it's Bryce Young, maybe it's Baker Mayfield, who knows? But set your future up for success on the offensive line. The Jets, Sauce Gardner, cornerback out of Cincinnati. I know Kyle Hamilton's staring them at the face, but I think they're going to put a value on an outside corner that can play physical man coverage. He's got the athletic ability, the length, primarily used boundary corner, which Robert with Richard Trent. And this is going to be one of those picks where I think, with the Jets, they go out, they get their guy, and they keep it moving. The Giants at 5 are I having connection issues here?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I think you might have had some connection issues there for a minute. You kind of went away there. You were talking about Sauce Gardner. Then I believe you're getting into the Giants at 5 at the end. So maybe to recap Sauce again for a second there. So I think you did cut out at the end of your Sauce Gardner take, and then you can roll into the Giants.
Yeah, no, I mean, just with Sauce, it's adding a boundary corner that Robert Saleh's used to having with Richard Sherman in the past. One of those players again that I think just for your defense, and he's somebody that just he makes so much sense for this team. So I think it's a great landing spot. And then with Kyle Hamilton, the Giants lost Jabril Peppers. I know they have Xavier McKinney and Julian Love, but McKinney is somebody that probably is better suited down in the box. And regardless, Kyle Hamilton just allows you that much more versatility. You can play him in the box, have an overhang role, single high, whatever it might be. So I think that one was kind of a no-brainer. And I was trying not to do trades in this one. But again, I could see a trade at 5 or 7 as well. So just to kind of quick recap, Jaguars go Hutchinson, Lions go Kayvon, Texans go Neal, Sauce Gardner to the Jets, and Hamilton to the Giants. And then I believe there was a question, right, about the Lions being good with Goff. I mean, I think they're satisfied with what they've seen. I think the fan base is satisfied with what they've seen so far through 1 year. He limited the turnovers. He managed the games very well. Not Matthew Stafford, obviously. He's not a top 10 quarterback by any means, but with the emphasis that they have on running the football, I think he makes so much sense for them because he can come in and just hand it off 30 times a game. And when he drops back to throw 20, 25 times a game, he's going to complete 16 to 17 of those passes for $175, 200 yards, maybe 2 touchdowns and no interceptions, or a touchdown and no interceptions. That's, I think, what they're looking for right now. And honestly, the firepower on offense just really isn't there yet anyway. So I think they're going to be fine with him either way. I've said it on this show before, I think, and if I haven't, I mean, the things I've been told is the worst kept secret in the league is Malik Willis as the future Detroit Lion quarterback. So I don't know, how much truth there is behind that other than having beers with the Lions coaching staff down at the Senior Bowl, but we didn't talk about Malik Willis. So it was one of those things, but I do know Mark Brunell likes him a lot just from watching practice and the way he spoke about him and the Lions talking about Malik. So we'll see. I mean, but in my mock draft, yeah, they're good with Goff and they go forward with Kayvon.
So, and then just on Kayvon a little bit there, I think you mentioned in your mock draft, I think, are people just overthinking the whole off the field? Because I don't really think there's a ton of off the field stuff to be super concerned about. I mean, there's a chip, right? Like you mentioned, there's a chip on his shoulder, but I don't know. I kind of want my defensive lineman that's going to go rush the quarterback to have a chip on his shoulder and to be mean. I don't want him to be like a super nice guy. I want him to go be mean and, kind of, put that intimidation factor out there on the field. But, there's nothing that's really to be concerned about, correct, off field with Kayvon, in your opinion?
Not that I've heard or gathered. I mean, it's more so just how he talks, how he carries himself, the fact that he left the combine early. And then there is the conversation of, he takes plays off. And I think it's not more so he takes plays off. There's just some production gaps in his play. And I think that's concerning to some people. Like, you watch Hutchinson, he's involved on every play because he's generating pressure or he's not getting washed out of plays. And Kayvon, you don't always see like that backside pursuit of chasing a guy down. Like it just feels like at times it's when he wants to do it. And I think that's kind of where the disconnect is with him as a player. But I think with time, he'll figure that out in the NFL. And if he lands in a place like Detroit, like that stuff's probably not going to fly. So you might as well come here and figure it out and be a great player and be a part of something that hopefully they're trying to build.
And a couple other comments here. Who do you guys think Buffalo pick at 25? Certainly, Jason. We'll get to that here in a little bit. And then Vlad, kind of saying he hopes at least 4 quarterbacks go before pick 25. Which, if I have Josh Allen, I want all the quarterbacks to go between picks 1 and 25 to push talent down to the Bills there at that spot. But definitely, Jason, we'll certainly be getting to the Bills pick here in a little bit. One other question in your top five, just kind of looking at your first mock, and again, maybe it's just the difference of approach. You had the Jets taking a tackle, maybe protecting Zach Wilson a little bit in your first mock, and then obviously in this one you just you went cornerback. Was that just in your, is that truly from your perspective what you think they should do versus what you think they're going to do, or do you really think that Sauce Gardner now is a better prospect, maybe more of an impact player to get for the Jets there at 4 as opposed to getting a tackle up there in the top 5?
Well, I think it's more so, like they're going to value defense. There's no question about it. And when you have 2 top 10 picks, the first time I was like, man, they could still take Sauce at 10 and take the offensive tackle at 4. But now with how the draft's kind of shaken out to be with Seattle sitting there, Atlanta sitting there, who didn't really address the offensive line. And then, obviously with the Giants sitting there, who are probably going to take an offensive lineman. And I know that they have liked Charles Cross quite a bit. I just wonder, is there going to be one that falls to them at 10? I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think the thing with the Jets is just they're going to value an offensive lineman, but is it necessarily going to be that offensive tackle, or is it going to be corner first and then seeing the offensive tackle? So again, I could see Sauce at 4. I could see Jermaine Johnson at 4, and then I could see Trevor Penning at 10, or something like that. So I think that those are stick options. This internet is killing me tonight.
Yeah, that's all right. A little bit of technical difficulties. So everybody out there, appreciate the patience as Russell works through some internet connections there. He was kind of going through just the differences between who he had at the Jets and his mock 1.0 versus mock 2.0. We had a comment out there saying, honestly, the Jets would want Garrett Wilson at 4. I personally don't think a receiver is going to go that high. Okay, and neither do you. So, I think the Jets could use a receiver, but I don't think 4. I don't think that's in play at 4 with the other talent that's on the board. But not a bad thought process there. But why don't we head into picks 6 through 10? Here, why don't you go through your mock, and we'll kind of do the same thing. We'll open it up for questions. I'll throw in a couple comments, and we'll see what's going on picks 6 through 10.
Yeah, so 6, it's just the most common one. I think it's the same that I had back in February. Kenny Pickett to the Panthers. It's been evident, they've been wanting to upgrade the quarterback position since last year, and they're going to do so in this draft. It's just, is it Kenny Pickett? Is it Malik Willis? Is it somebody on left field like a Desmond Ridder, maybe, or a Matt Corral? But at the end of the day, I think this is their guy. When you connect the dots, like I've always said, Matt Rule was coaching at Temple, was recruiting Kenny Pickett, and Kenny Pickett flipped to Pittsburgh because Rule took the Baylor job, and David Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, went to Pitt. He's a Pitt grad. You just connect the dots. They're going to fall in love with this kid if they haven't already, and that's going to be their guy. And if I had to lock in a pick in the top 10, this would probably be my lock. I would just, unless there's something crazy that happens where there's 2 QB needy teams that take them ahead, but I don't see that being the case. So pick it to the Panthers, and then the Giants back on the clock at 7. Like I said, they could trade, but I'll keep them here. And with that, Ike Mekwonu out of NC State. I think that the Giants are going to be one of those teams looking at an offensive tackle. It could be Charles Cross, because I know that they've kind of been tied to him throughout this process, but I like Ike Mekwonu a little bit more. He can, I think, play both the left tackle or the right tackle spot for them. And I think he's athletic enough and versatile enough to do that. He's a great finisher. He's somebody that has a chip on his shoulder, has that wrestling background as well. So he understands how to win with leverage. So somebody that can help this offense get going in the right direction. I think that's kind of key for the Giants. The Falcons at 8, it's been no secret. I love Malik Willis to the Falcons. He's from Atlanta. I think when you put him in this offense behind Marcus Mariota for a year, maybe 2, it can work itself out with the other weapons that they might have. And Willis can come in and figure some things out as far as how to throw with a little better touch, anticipation, and be the asset that he will eventually become for a team with his mobility, his arm strength, and somebody that, with an offense that already has Kyle Pitts as the centerpiece, maybe they can add another wide receiver at some point. I think that this would be a home run of a pick for the Falcons. 9 at Seattle, Charles Cross. Of course, they get rid of Russell Wilson and then go out and draft an offensive tackle. But Cross just makes so much sense. I mean, Stone Forsythe or whatever his name is going to be playing left tackle for them. And I think that's a huge mistake. I know some people that really liked him last year, but I think you got to upgrade there. And Charles Cross is maybe the best pass protector in this draft just because he wins with his length, his patience. He's got relatively good lower body flexibility. So I like him there for Seattle. And then real quick with the Jets at 10, Jermaine Johnson, the edge out of Florida State, one of my favorite players in this draft. Just the more and more I watched of him, the more and more I fell in love. And it just, I think with Carl Lawson coming back from a torn Achilles, I think that there's a strong likelihood that they look at potentially not necessarily replacing him, but making sure that they have another edge rusher to one play opposite of him, but also to help with any mishaps he might have within his game. So, he went from being a rotational player to ACC Defensive Player of the Year, just really starting to come onto his own and figure it out. So I like the fit here. And I think he is somebody that the Jets will really covet. And if they don't get him at 10, it's because obviously he's already off the board. But if he's there, I think that's their guy.
All right. And, just kind of looking at the, your first mock again to this one, very consistent with the Pickett and the Malik Willis picks. It switched up a little bit between the Giants. You had another defensive player, Nakobe Dean, going to them in the first mock. And then, of course, went tackle, which I kind of like with the Giants going tackle here at 7. Obviously, the trade with the Seahawks changed up the 9 pick there. And then, again, some consistency. With the Jets and Jermaine Johnson at 10. So, I like a lot of that picks from 6 through 10. I know Bill's Mafia out there, not loving to see the Jets maybe make smart picks. And, I got to ask Jessica, what's up with this comment? Jessica, does anything really work in Detroit or Cleveland? The answer is obviously no, it doesn't. However, Russell and me are both Detroit and Cleveland fans. So I need to know the context of that comment, but you're right. Everything does not work out.
My feelings are hurt.
I'm crying over here. I'm very sad.
Yeah, that one hurts.
You cut me deep.
Yeah. No, does anything really work in Detroit or Cleveland? No, it doesn't always work, but we're trying and we got to hold out hope every year because that's what we do as fans of our teams. I'm sure there's plenty of Bills fans out there that never thought they'd see them playing at this level again. I'm sure there's some that thought that they would be in the Super Bowl in 2003 with JP Lossman, but that's fine. It is what it is. Teams go through rough patches, and for teams like mine, it's going on 60 years, so it is fine.
Yeah, she's referring to your internet connection. That it's similar to Detroit. Yeah, it's okay. There's always there's technical issues from time to time. We've gone 8 weeks without a major issue, so it was about we were due for a little bit of
sometimes it happens just with this whole StreamYard thing that we use. I don't know why it gets a little choppy. It happened in the fall a little bit. And I think between, streaming TV out in the living room, wife on Wi-Fi, using her computer or whatever, after a while, it just kind of lags out. So fingers crossed it holds up for the rest of the show.
All right, let's keep on rolling. Let's go through picks 11 through 15 of your second mock draft.
Yeah, Washington. Initially, I know I gave them Charles Cross, but I think the run on the offensive tackles could happen. I think they could still look at an offensive lineman here. Maybe it's somebody on the interior. Maybe it is a Tyler Linderbaum. Maybe it is a Zion Johnson. But I know that they've made some additions there, so maybe they won't do that, but we'll see. But Derek Stingley's there, and I think Kendall Fuller, William Jackson, Benjamin St-Juste. Those guys are fine, but if you can add a guy like Derek Stingley, who is maybe a shell of what he used to be. 2019 seems like a long time ago, at least when you watch him play, and the injuries have kind of piled up. He's only played in 10 games over the last 2 years. But if you can bring him in and he plays at that high level when you're matching up against the Cowboys, who have CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup and all these playmakers, and then the Giants, obviously they have some decent receivers. They just don't have a quarterback. And if the Eagles are going to add another receiver in this draft, which I have them doing, if that's going to be the case, then I think this is one of those moves that you're preparing for the future, because you just don't know how much better these receivers are going to be, and if you can't cover them, then you can't stop them. And again, with that front seven, I think it's a great pick. The Vikings at 12, Devin Lloyd out of Utah. Anthony Barr's on a 1-year deal. I don't think he'll be back after this year, to be completely honest. Maybe he will be, but I think Devin Lloyd's a great replacement for him. Very versatile, can play in a wide range of spots, from rushing off the edge to playing in the middle, to covering guys out with curl to flats responsibilities. So he's a really fun player to watch. And he's not my top linebacker, but he ends up being the first linebacker off the board, because I think there's going to be a team in that top 10, top 12 range that's just going to fall in love with him and pull the trigger. And one of those teams could be Washington. So we'll keep tabs on that. Houston at 13, going back to the offense here, Drake London out of USC. Like I mentioned, if you can set the table for success for Davis Mills or another quarterback, that's what you got to do. The rumors of Brandon Cooks being traded have obviously been happening all year or all off season. So I say go out, get a guy that would be fun to pair with Cooks for the time being, and Nico Collins and stuff like that. London has great, 50-50 ball skills, and then obviously just his catch radius is massive, and a former basketball player, kind of plays the position like that, trying to run his routes like he's the point guard and doing things like that. So love his length, love his overall athletic ability. I like this fit for him in Houston. Baltimore at 14. This is just a Baltimore Raven pick. Tyler Linderbaum, interior offensive lineman out of Iowa. You plug and play him at center. He locks it down for 12 to 14 years, and he's just solid as a rock. I know there's some concerns about, only being 296 pounds, being that sub 300 pound interior offensive lineman is scary. He doesn't have a lot of length to add to his frame. As far as adding more weight and things like that, he's kind of like maxed out, but he's very athletic, great reach blocker. And I think when you have a mobile quarterback, you need a guy up front that can kind of move around, handle blitzes and pressures. And I think the Ravens would be really happy to have him there at 14. The Eagles at 15, give me Chris Olave out of Ohio State. This is Mr. Consistent at the wide receiver position. I know we've talked about him a ton on this show already. He is just so smooth, so silky, just one of those guys that is a fine route runner, a great release package, and somebody that I think can come in, and I've said it time and time again, could easily come in and catch 80 to 90 receptions. It wouldn't surprise me at all if he has a very productive rookie year and you put him in Philly with Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith. I think it's a great trio right there, and a great package that they can potentially present to the NFC East and the rest of the NFL. So I like the Eagles with Olave there.
Yeah, I think the Eagles with Olave, that could be very, very scary, pairing at the wide receiver position, and, have Jalen Hurts, some really nice weapons there. Getting to just a couple of the comments, they were submitted some comments about, Minnesota here from Jay Davis. Always interesting for Minnesota. I don't know if you're a McDuffie truther or hater, but I love McDuffie from Minnesota. And I think in general, when we did our Cover One mock draft live with Anthony on the show, I think I actually made the Minnesota pick of 5, if I remember correctly. And I think they have defensive needs across the board, in my opinion. I think their offense is in a good spot, and I think they need a lot on defense. So, whether it is the linebacker, Devin Lloyd, as Russell said, or a corner, I could see them going corner too. But, any comments on McDuffie potentially to Minnesota there, or secondary help for them? We might have lost Russell again, so we'll wait for him to get back here. But I'll answer a question while we're waiting for Russell. We had a couple Browns questions out there. One was, who is the Browns quarterback going to be? Obviously with Deshaun Watson, at quarterback this year, if you talk about on the field solely, there's a lot to like about Deshaun Watson, and certainly he's going to, start every game if possible. I personally think, with the off the field stuff, there's a lot of discussion because there's so many civil cases pending. He did not make the commissioner's exempt list. There's a very, there's a possibility. I won't say it's an extremely high one, but I think there is a more than 50% chance that he does not actually get suspended at all, at least to start 2022 or potentially all of 2022 until some of those civil cases, some more information comes out on them. I think the NFL is kind of going to wait and see a little bit on that. And, there's some interesting thought process going on right now about, okay, if they go ahead and suspend him, say for 6 games or 4 games or whatever, and then something comes out more so than what we've already seen, that the NFL's, potentially doesn't want to be in that spot. So, I think for the Browns, just to kind of answer the question of, who will be their quarterback, I'm starting to lean towards Deshaun Watson's going to start more games than people think here in 2022. Now, maybe in 2023, he's going to get hit with some suspension, depending again on how those civil cases work out. But Deshaun, I think, is going to play quite a bit here if we're just going to stick to on the field conversation with Watson, which obviously is going to be an upgrade at the quarterback position for the Browns. If he is suspended, of course, Jacoby Brissett. The Browns went out there and grabbed Jacoby Brissett. He's a solid backup quarterback. He's had some success, filling in for teams, the Colts, one of them, and leading them to some victories. So with the running game the Browns have, I certainly think Jacoby could hold the fort down. Let's say, if Watson does get suspended, say for 6 games, and depending on the schedule, the Browns' schedule is fairly, I don't want to say easy, but it's, I like it. I don't know who we're going to get in the first 6 weeks, but I could see Jacoby, holding the fort down a little bit. But Russell, I think you might be back here, so I was just kind of holding it down, answering some Browns questions there. I kind of left you off with, the Vikings. We had a comment about the Vikings pick that's up on the screen there. Could you see them going corner? I think they could go a lot of directions anywhere defensively.
Yeah, I think they could really look at a corner there. I think Derek Stingley would make a lot of sense for them if he was there. I do like Trent McDuffie quite a bit. I don't think I would take him at 12. That's just me personally. And again, these picks are based off of where kind of my board falls. So keep that in mind too. Like I'm going off of what I would be doing off my board, off my guide that you guys will all get on Monday. But yeah, I mean, if he's there, if that's their guy, and that's the other thing, like these teams have their boards ranked completely different how I rank it or ranked to any other team. Like, they don't have 400 players up on the board. They have maybe 80. They have 100. They that might be it. Like, and they figure out the best players that they have there, and then that's why they make the moves out. Like they're trading out of picks because their board isn't right and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, if McDuffie's there, sure. But I just think with this cornerback group, it's a relatively deep one. Linebacker, it's deep, but if you can get somebody like a Devin Lloyd, who is just kind of a high impact player from potentially day one, he makes a lot of sense. So that's why I went that route.
Okay. Let's keep it on rolling here. Let's go picks 16 through 20, starting off with one of two New Orleans Saints picks here in the first round of the 2022 draft.
Yeah, the Saints, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver out of Ohio State. Still kind of torn on what they're actually going to do. I mean, I think they're probably going to take a QB, but I don't know. But with that, I mean, Garrett Wilson's there. I'm going to take him. I think, Michael Thomas, his days are kind of numbered in New Orleans. That's at least how it feels like. And maybe that's somebody that they trade to get some draft capital or clear books. And if you can add him, I think it's kind of a home run. And they just keep it moving. So 17, the Chargers, love this fit. Jameson Williams out of Alabama going there, pairing him up with making the trio of Jameson Williams, Keenan Allen, and Mike Williams, I think would be.
All right. Unfortunately, we have lost Russell again. So I'm just going to go ahead and kind of recap. Obviously, you can go out there and cover1.net. You can kind of take a look at his mock draft. His pick 16 through 20 was Garrett Wilson, Jameson Williams, Jacoby Dean. Trevor Penning was going to the Saints at tackle, and then Desmond Ridder was rounding out the top 20 for him at this, at the Pittsburgh Steelers at pick 20. So if he comes back, I was going to be really interested to hear his opinions on if the Saints are going to have to move up in the draft or not to select a quarterback, and why he maybe had them passing on Desmond Ridder at 20. So, Russell, I see you are back. I went through and just kind of did your 16 through 20 for everybody. Wilson, Jameson Williams, Jacoby Dean to the Eagles at 18. Then you went with Trevor Penning at 19, a tackle for the Saints, which obviously makes some sense since they just lost one of their tackles in free agency. But, we were talking a lot about quarterbacks of the Saints, and are they going to use those picks maybe to move up? No, are they just going to try to put talent around Jameis? And I think in this case, you're going with they're going to just put talent around Jameis and not select Desmond Ridder at 20 or try to move up with those picks.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly could. I'm just getting so flustered because this internet is driving me insane tonight. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that these teams might be able to, do as far as trading, just between the 16 and 20 spot. I think, again, we could see some action, like you mentioned. Maybe the Steelers sit there at 20, maybe they move up. I don't know, but with the Chargers, again, Jameson Williams going there with Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, how can you not love that for Justin Herbert? You're going to have to compete in a very competitive AFC West. So this one just makes so much sense. The Eagles at 18 with the Kobe Dean. I know some people don't like the selection, but I personally think it's a fine fit. They've been looking for a linebacker for quite some time, and he, again, is one of those players I think is one of the 15 best players in this draft, and somebody that just super high character kid would make so much sense for this team to have, and I think it would be phenomenal for the Eagles to take a player like this, who kind of has a resemblance to like Patrick Queen. He just kind of shoots out of a cannon, he gets after it, and he's aggressive, downhill, blitzing type of player that would be a home run for the Eagles. After that, Saints going Trevor Penning, Northern Iowa. Like I said, I think offensive tackle is very much in the cards for them. They lost Armstead to free agency, and I think this is just one of those things where, Penning is at 19 simply because he's still a little raw, a little rough around the edges, plays with a lot of aggression, which you love to see, but it's going to lead to some penalties in the NFL. Reminds me so much of Garrett Bowles. It's not even funny. It's just that's who he is. And Garrett Bowles went 20th. So Trevor Penning at 19. Here we go. And then again, the Steelers, Desmond Ridder, quarterback out of Cincinnati. There's no way Trubisky is their guy. Yeah, seriously. And I'm not repeating that. But yeah, Desmond Ridder at 20 going to the Steelers. There's no way Trubisky is the future of that team. There's just no way. I know they gave him some money, so maybe they don't take the quarterback spot this early. But if he's there, I love that fit. I think it's a great landing spot for Ridder, and I think it's a great fit for the Steelers overall.
Yeah, and as a Browns fan, I like Desmond Ridder a decent amount as well. So I would prefer that he doesn't go to Pittsburgh. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense, to pair him up there. I think the Steelers, to your point, aren't necessarily going to be just sitting tight with Mitch Trubisky, at least not for long. Even though I don't mind Mitch as a backup quarterback, I just I'm not so sure that he's a top starting quarterback in the league. And that's what you need these days here in the old NFL. So why don't we? I agree, Pops. Pops, Mitch T is better than people think. He's certainly not a bad quarterback. I feel like he's kind of similar to Jacoby Brissett, and more athletic, of course, but you need from a production and or effectiveness perspective. Which if you needed him to start half a season due to injury, cool. Yeah, that's not bad. But I don't know that I want to be putting all of my hopes on Mitch True. Long term, but I guess we'll find out. We'll find out here. Why don't we do this? Just because you are having some internet issues, let's just I'm just going to read off some picks here, and then I kind of want your take on the Patriots pick, just because we usually do have a lot of Bills Mafia fans out there, so kind of curious on your take on pick 21. So we'll start there, and then of course the Bills pick at 25. So at 21, you had Trayvon Walker to the Patriots, edge out of Georgia. You mentioned him a little bit earlier, so I want to get your thoughts on him. Green Bay, 22, Jahan Dotson, wide receiver out of Penn State, who I know you like quite a bit. It makes a lot of sense with the departure of Devontae Adams out to the Raiders. Arizona, Jordan Davis had an awesome combine. D tackle out of Georgia. 24, Zion Johnson, trying to bolster the offensive line. And then 25, to the Buffalo Bills, Trent McDuffie, cornerback out of Washington, which I know when we did our Cover One mock draft live, which I loved. I thought that was awesome. I believe Anthony Prohaska had that pick and did make that same pick, and the chat went wild. So I think Bills Mafia would be very happy if he was there and a cornerback of his caliber was available at 25. But real quick, what's your thoughts? What was your thought process on the Patriots pick? How do you think he can help that team? Especially for Bills Mafia fans that are obviously hoping the Patriots make a bad pick.
Yeah, well, I mean, realistically, Trayvon Walker's probably not going to be there. I mean, he's probably going to go somewhere in that top 10, top 15, just because of how athletic he is and how well he tested. But off my board, this is about where he's positioned on the overall big board. I don't see this top 5 player, like I mentioned. I think he is somebody that is still very rough around the edges. He needs to find ways to work his hands. And as strong as you are, like if you can't play in the position consistently by working your hands, the power is only going to get you so far. It might get you 4 or 5 sacks, but I'm not drafting you as a first-round player, especially in the top 10, but really in the first round to get me 4 or 5 sacks. I'm drafting you to become one of the most productive edge rushers in the class out of the group. And Walker can do it, but it's just a matter of where he lands. And I think if this is where he was to go or were to go, it would be a great landing spot. I think there's a ton of versatility to his game. He could play in a variety of spots. You pair him up with Matthew Judon, which is just kind of like that. I mean, that's a serious pairing. And that's the thing, like some of his production, a lot of it's based on, and like, that's the other thing. Like if for Nakobe Dean, if we're going to knock him for being so productive because he had so many talented players around him, why the hell are we doing that? Like, why aren't we doing that with Trayvon Walker? Like, why are we faulting Dean? Why are we faulting Quay Walker? Why are we faulting, like, if that's the case, all these kids should be in the first round out of Georgia. Like, that's just the way it is. But, people have their reasons for whatever reason. But when I watched those games, I just was like, man, I love seeing him pop off the screen. I love seeing the push-pull move against Evan Neal. But at the end of the day, like it's not there. But if he goes to a team like New England, I think it's a great fit. Some other landing spots would obviously be, maybe a team like Minnesota, which I think is probably unlikely, but maybe the Jets, just simply because of the kind of the personnel that they have. But other than that, like I think those are like the best spots for him.
So we had in my opinion, a good question here in the chat. Compare maybe McDuffie versus, Booth. I know we've talked about Booth quite a bit as well, a little bit. Not quite a bit. We've talked about Booth a little bit on the show. So, compare maybe McDuffie or Booth, who, I think Booth's probably more likely to be available at 25, in my opinion. But you're obviously more the expert than myself. But maybe compare those two cornerbacks and what they bring to the table.
Comparing McDuffie to Booth, it's definitely McDuffie over Booth for me. I thought Booth just didn't look the same in 2021 as he did in years past. I like the physicality that he plays with. I like his overall size, his aggressiveness. I think he is a relatively good, cover corner, but I thought he was slow in and out of his breaks at times. I thought, when he's trying to close, it was just not always there. Out of his back pedal, there was this delay. And then just this offseason, he's been banged up the entire offseason. Like that's a concern to me. Like if you're running around in shorts and you're, messing up your quad and you're hurting your lower body, like how can I trust that you can even get through rookie camp? How can I trust that you're going to be somebody I take in the first round when, like if I take Andrew Booth over Trent McDuffie and McDuffie goes to, let's just say, Tampa Bay, and he's out there crushing it, and I didn't take him because I took Andrew Booth and he's already injured, I'm going to kick myself because I know going into this draft, he's injured. And it's just one of those things. Like it's very knowing and open that he's been getting dinged up, and I can't trust that. And again, when you go from 2020 to 2021 and you see kind of the difference in play, I'm wondering, like, why is he decreasing in play? Is he getting comfortable with who he is? Is he getting comfortable being this close to the NFL? I don't want a guy to be to be comfortable. I want guys to play uncomfortably because their job is on the line. Like that's how I view it. So, it's McDuffie for me.
Okay. And there was, some interesting chat about the arm length for McDuffie. Pete was bringing up some good comments. I'm not sure if you were checking those out, but any concerns, from an arm length perspective? I mean, I would suppose, that certainly could be an issue, not only in coverage at times, but also just maybe getting that jam off the line of scrimmage. But, any concerns about arm length?
I mean, it might suck to have him as your press man corner at times because you might not be able to always hit the opposition clearly in the chest plate or something like that. But he's so athletic. He's constantly, able to close and change direction, and he shows the burst to get to the football. So I think he's somebody that with his athletic ability alone, he's going to be just fine. He shows the ball skills. He shows the ability to, jump around receivers and get his hand across and playing through the catch point. Like the ball can still hit the receiver, but if you're playing through those hands, That's all that matters. And I think he does that consistently enough, regardless of the arm length.
Okay. All right. Well, let's bring it home tonight. I'm just going to read off your picks 26 through 32, and then we'll get a couple comments on them. Of course, in the chat, if you have any additional questions for us, feel free to throw them out there. At 26, you have the Titans taking George Karlaftis edge out of Purdue. 27, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers adding some offensive line help for Mr. Tom Brady and Kenyon Green out of Texas A&M. 28, you actually had a mock trade, so I'm very interested in what you were thinking there. You had the Jets in a trade with Green Bay taking Treylon Burks out of Arkansas. The Chiefs back-to-back 29 and 30. Daxton Hill, safety out of Michigan, and then Devontae Watt, some interior D line help out of Georgia, and then the Bengals at 31. Tyler Smith continuing to bolster their offensive line out of Tulsa, in the Detroit Lions ending the draft. Your Detroit Lions taking, I think, one of your favorite players in this draft, Jaquan Brisker, safety out of Penn State. So, definitely interested in your mock trade there between the Jets and Green Bay. What were your thoughts there?
Yeah. Before I get into that real quick, just for the Bills fans, Trent McDuffie was the pick for Buffalo, by the way, the corner out of Washington. We did mention that, but then we started, we started talking about McDuffie over Booth and some of the other players in those spots. But yeah, the mock trade, I wasn't going to do one. And then I kind of got to like the end of it and I was like, man, I just don't see the Packers keeping this selection. I just don't. And in real life, like in a real draft, I don't see it happening. And I just kind of got my like thinking hat on and I was like, this one actually makes sense. Like I could see the Packers trading away their third round pick and this first rounder to move back 7 spots, but also, move up 23 spots in the third round where they value interior offensive linemen and interior defensive linemen. And that's where they find their value. That's where they find their gems. And they've already got the receiver here. Now they can move back and they can justify taking a guy like George Pickens at 35 if he's there, or a Christian Watson if they want to double down on receiver. And, just by doing this, I mean, they essentially, I think if my math's correct, they would now have 5 picks in the top 70 rather than 5 picks in the top 100. So I think that goes a long way when you're able to kind of adjust your board 30 spots. And you're able to get your guys. So with the Jets, it's, we talked about maybe a wide receiver at 4. I know somebody commented and said Garrett Wilson. I know it's been rumored, what about Drake London at 10 or something like that? But in this situation, I love the thought of a Treylon Burks, who was actually there visiting New York today. So I like his fit in that offense. And when you put him in there with Elijah Moore, Corey Davis, Uzama, you can do a lot, and he can do a lot. And I think the Jets would be running to the podium to make that deal, regardless of giving up the spots in the third round.
All right. And, again, we went through your last 7 picks there to end the draft, again, starting at 26 with the Titans taking Karlaftis, again, 27, Kenyon Green to the Buccaneers, interior line of Texas A&M, Jets in the mock trade, getting Treylon Burks, Chiefs, Daxton Hill, and Devontae Wyatt going some defense in Kansas City, interior line, Tyler Smith for the Bengals, and Jaquan Brisker to your Lions at safety. Was there any other player there you wanted to make a quick comment on in the last 7 picks?
I will say that the Titans going George Karlaftis, I really like that fit. It was one of those that just kind of like stumbled upon. Earlier, I had Matt Corral in my first mock draft going there. I like that fit behind Ryan Tannehill. I think you might be able to maybe get some resemblance of his game in, from Tannehill into Corral potentially. But with that, I mean, Karlaftis, I looked at their overall their defense in Tennessee, and Danico Autry, is going to be 32 in July. If they got rid of him after this upcoming season, he's only going to be $2 million against the cap. So they're able to save, I want to say like $4 or $5 million by letting him go, which can go a long way when you're trying to maybe add a depth piece up front on your offense, or another wide receiver into the mix on a cheap 1-year deal or something. So like, there's a lot of different things that the Titans can do there, but Karlaftis, I don't see a top 10 player like everybody else does. I thought there were times that he was kind of tight with his hips. The pass rush and the counter moves that he had in 2019 were phenomenal as a freshman, but we just don't really see that anymore. He looks just a little bit more slower, and I don't want to say sluggish because that's kind of a bad way of putting it, but like he just tries to go too far into the well of being that power edge rusher that it just doesn't always work. And I think if he goes to a place like Tennessee, it's a great landing spot with the coaching staff that's there, and he can really be utilized with his hand in the dirt. And on the outside of him and rushing around with him would be Bud Dupree, Harold Landry, stuff like that. So it kind of gives him a trio of future players to really dominate the position off the edge.
All right. Well, that was, fun. I love going through mock drafts. Obviously technical difficulties, made it a little bit tough. Definitely appreciate everybody hanging with us in the chat and, being patient with us as we worked through some of those technical difficulties. Again, his mock draft 2.0 is out there on the cover1.net site right now. You can go check it out. Again, his Russell's draft guide will be dropping Monday. I'm really excited to take a look at that. So, we'll certainly continue to, discuss the latest happenings in the NFL news as we head towards the NFL draft. We'll probably get into a little bit more coverage in round 2 as we head towards that draft as well. I don't know. Maybe we'll do a live. I don't know. Maybe me and you can do a live mock of round 2. That could be kind of fun. I don't know. We'll have to think about it, what we're going to do next week. Pop says one more question, though, for us before we do wrap up. We can get that out there. For you, Russell, can Roger McCreary follow the Bills in round 2? If yes, do you think the Bills should double dip at corner? Let's answer that one before we get out of here this evening.
That's a great question. I think if he was to fall to them, I think that they would strongly consider him. There's a chance he could still go somewhere in the back end of the first round. I mean, you look at Kansas City. If Jackson Hill is gone, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe the Chiefs strongly consider a Roger McCreary, regardless of the possibility of like a Kaiir Gordon or something like that, just simply because of how fluid McCreary is. And I think, you could put him in the slot. You could play him on the outside because he is that physical. So I think that there's a chance that they looked at that direction for sure. As far as another cornerback in the second round, I think he could be there, but it's hard to say because there's going to be a run of teams that have some back-to-back picks there. Seattle has them. Indianapolis at 42, I think they don't have Rocky Sin anymore, who they took a few years back. So that would be an interesting landing spot for Roger McCreary if they value that, that slot corner in a sense. So I think I don't want to say yes, but I also don't want to say no because we don't know how it's going to shake out. But if he's there, I could certainly see him do it.
All right. So again, we appreciate everybody's chat. We appreciate everybody's participation tonight. Again, thank you for being patient with us through some technical issues. Once again, check out Russell's mock draft 2.0, cover1.net. Look for his draft guide dropping here shortly on Monday. Please follow us on Twitter at Burner Sports and at Russ NFL Draft on Twitter. Hit the like button on these episodes. It definitely helps us out. It helps Cover One out as well from a channel perspective. And again, we just appreciate it. So any parting thoughts for the folks tonight, Russell?
No, appreciate the continued support that we always get here on the show. I appreciate everybody, like you mentioned, sticking through and dealing with the technical difficulties. It happens from time to time. It is what it is. But yeah, draft guide on Monday. Mock drafts 2.0s out there if you want to check it out, like you guys said. Smash that follow button at Russ NFL Draft, at Burn River Sports. Other than that, appreciate it. It's been fun. I'm looking forward to next week where I don't know what we're going to do. I don't know if we're going to break down my guide or you want to do a 2-round mock draft. I don't really care. We can do both. I don't care. Whatever. Let's have some fun. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. More to come. Well, I don't know. We'll figure it out. We'll talk about it over social media. We'll see what we want to do next week as we get closer to the 2022 NFL Draft. Well, again, thanks to everybody. We are out of here for the Cover One NFL Draft Weekly Show. Thanks, everybody. Have a great